Hi, Mark Koep here with CampgroundViews.com and Wade Elliott from Utility Supply Group. We're at the lovely Petaluma KOA, and I have the chance to sit down with him and ask a few questions and get some more information from the Wizard of Watts. So Wade, thank you for being here with me.
Thanks, Mark.
So first off, introduce to our audience who you are and what you do.
I'm Wade Elliott. I'm the president of Utility Supply Group. Utility Supply Group is a supplier of electrical infrastructure items for your RV park.
So park operators, obviously I think electricity, we were talking about this a little earlier, I feel that electricity is the backbone of an RV park. I mean, the underlying reason somebody's willing to pay money to stay at a campground is so they can plug in their unit. So that backbone is what you help them provide, right?
Exactly, and that backbone should be almost invisible. If the power's working and it's at a good voltage, it should be invisible, and your customers can then just have fun at your park.
Yeah, so what should a park operator, let's start off first, somebody who's thinking about building a park. What questions should they be asking, or do they need to ask when they're thinking about their electricity, budgeting for it, all that type of stuff? How is there ways you can help them in that planning process?
Utility Supply Group will sit down with somebody when they're looking at adding to their park or starting a new RV park and go through a series of questions. You know, things like, what's the incoming voltage? Are you going to have to supply your own transformers? What's the distance from one end of the park to the other? What kind of a park are you trying to be? Are you trying to be an overnight park? You're trying to be a destination park? Kind of get an idea of the amenities you want to have. And thinking about amenities, that means power.
Everything needs, so we're talking pools, offices, buildings.
Wi-Fi needs power.
Wi-Fi needs power, yeah, and so understanding that if you're putting a Wi-Fi tower out somewhere, you're going to need electricity for that.
You're going to need power for that.
Interesting. So you would help, do they pay you for this service, or how does that work as a park operator?
Well, Utility Supply Group does provide an electrical layout service, and we charge a fee for that, but once you buy the equipment from us, we turn around and give that right back to you.
Okay, so basically it's like, hey, we're going to do a lot of work for you. If
right.
you don't want to buy from us, pay us a little bit for our time otherwise.
Right.
And so, we've talked a little bit, who's your competitors in the industry? Is it just some random company that's going to sell them a box somewhere? Or, who is your competitor?
Typically, there are a couple of competitors out there that just are selling equipment. They have no necessary expertise in the business, and then there are also the electrical supply houses out there that have typically no experience in the business, that, really don't know RV parks at all.
So as a park owner, so they probably can go down to Home Depot and buy a breaker, right?
They can buy a breaker at Home Depot. In some cases, they might be able to find a box that may or may not be the correct box for their park.
Okay, and so there's actually differences.
There are differences. In an RV park, the National Electric Code has requirements for types of power and types of protection in that box. And there are boxes out there that don't have that protection in them. And so that's why it's important to be talking with somebody or using an electrician or talking with Utility Supply Group that can at least tell you where those pitfalls may be and proper equipment to use.
So as a park owner, say they're like, I can buy this stuff online, I found a really good deal for it, and it doesn't meet code. What does that mean? Does it mean anything to them? Or, how can that hurt them? Why should they consider it?
Well, code's all about safety.
Okay.
And if it's not meeting code, that kind of means it's not meeting the safety requirements as well. So if you've got a 50 amp receptacle in your RV park and you don't have a 20 amp receptacle in your park, that means that if somebody needs that 20 amp receptacle, they're going to do things that are unsafe to get that 20 amp. And that's why the code's there. It's all about safety. And if you're not providing the equipment to be safe and somebody gets hurt in your park, you're kind of letting yourself open for liability.
So potential liability, potential
Absolutely.
lawsuits. So say somebody's designing a 100 site RV park, and they wanted to get like a ballpark idea of what's it going to cost for electric like that. Would they call you first and say, hey, here's my design, and you can kind of look at it and say, okay, here's what you're going to generally need, and here's a price point for that? Is that how it would work?
I've had people come and say, give me some idea of where the ballpark is.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them a good conservative number is, for the equipment only, about $750
Per site?
per site.
And that covers the wiring, and generally that's about what's average.
And I say that's a conservative number is, that's what you'll budget for. And you know, then it depends on how many sites you're putting in. At 100 sites, you know, I've seen that come in closer to $500 per site for the equipment. Now, obviously, there's labor and all sorts of other things. That's just the electrical equipment that I'm talking. You know, budget about $750, and then be pleasantly surprised when it's less than that.
Okay, so now for park operators who own a site or operating a site that's been around 10, 15 years, maybe even longer, what should they be thinking about for the electricity needs, upgrades, maintenance? I mean, what's their concerns?
The big question that I talk to people about is how big is the wire in the ground? Because when that park was designed, our RVs were 30 amp, small, didn't have high load requirements in them. You'll see RVs out there with washers and dryers and 4 TVs and 3 air conditioners, and 58% of all RVs now come with 50 amp. Or built with 50 amp.
I didn't know that number. So 58% now.
58%. Even you know, large fifth wheels are 50 amp.
Okay.
With power management systems in them that keep the average power up there. So if something was put in your park 15, 20 years ago, more than likely the wire in the ground and distribution system you've got won't handle an upgrade to 50 amp.
How do they figure that out as a park operator? Where would they look?
Well, your electrician can help you with that by looking at the distribution box and the wire going to each of the panels, and if you've got some good records knowing about the distribution system in your park, that'll be easy to figure out.
Okay.
Utility Supply Group also does on-site consulting.
You'll come out and check it out for them and give them, okay.
We'll come out and do an on-site and kind of tell you, okay, this is a do-over, or here's how you can make this work by overlaying, you know, so you can keep what you've got and cut it back to this area and then overlay it with a new panel to take care of this. And there's lots of different ways to go, but the bottom line here is, if it was 15, 20 years ago, I can almost guarantee that what you've got in the park isn't enough to handle.
Isn't enough to handle. So assume you're talking to me, because I know absolutely nothing about electricity. How does it work? I mean, so really, like, because there's the power lines out on the street, right?
Right. Yep.
So, okay, there's a power line on the street, there's a pedestal here. How does that work?
So the power company brings the power at high voltage into the park.
Okay.
They'll go through their meter, and then typically to a transformer. That transformer will get the voltage down that an RV can use.
Okay.
And what is called is 120 to 240.
Okay.
And in an RV, everything in an RV is only 120 volts. Even though it might be a 50 amp 240 RV, everything in there is 120 volts.
Okay.
All the air conditioners 120 volts. So now you've got distribution you have to worry about. So you from that transformer through the distribution panel, through the wires going to the sites, distance can be your enemy. A rule of thumb that I like to use is 300 feet. At 300 feet, we need to start worrying about, okay, you know, do we have to go oversize on the wire, because we're worried about voltage drop. If you get more than 6 volt drop on 120 volts, that's outside of the recommended voltage drop, and that's when you're going to get your customers complain about a low voltage. What's the problem with the low voltage is, in the power equation, when volts go down, amps go up, and when amps go up, heat goes up, and that's what burns up microwaves and TVs.
Amps is the measure of ohms, right? Is that the flow of electricity? Or what voltage versus?
So
Talk to a dummy here, because I'm a dummy on this.
Power is roughly equal to voltage times amps.
Power is voltage times amps. Okay.
So you know, if you look at a 1500 watt hair dryer.
Okay.
You know, or let's make it easy. A 1200 watt hair dryer at 120 volts is 10 amps.
Just divide it. So it's putting it. Is it 10 amp the draw? Is that what it's
120, 10 amps.
Okay.
So 120 times 10 is 1200 watts.
So when you've got that voltage drop and you're pulling more amps, is that when the wires start heating up? Is that
So
what happens?
when you pull the voltage down, let's say you get the voltage down to 80, now you need whatever that number works out to be. I think 15 amps. In order to get that 1200 watts for that hair dryer.
I see.
So now more amps, that causes more heat, and that's what causes the plugs in your pedestals to burn up, or the plug on your customers' RVs to burn up, or when you get too low of a voltage, the inverter in an RV will cut out, the microwave may burn up, the flat screen TVs don't like low voltage. About the only thing that works on a low voltage are the 12 volt lights, and not too many people camp with just
No.
12-volt lights anymore.
So interesting. So a park operator may be running a park. They may have bought it. They haven't thought about the electricity. So that sounds like that's some warning signs they can look for. If they start finding that they're burning up plugs, would they be tripping breakers a lot too, or is that totally separate?
Nope, those are all indicators.
Okay.
We started seeing probably 8-10 years ago 30 amp receptacles melting and getting burnt up. The way we saw that is our customers were purchasing a lot more 30 amp receptacles to replace them.
Interesting.
And my theory is what happened is as the RVs got bigger, they started using more power, and now you've got a system that was built 15-20 years ago expecting some low level of power usage, now at a higher level of power usage, and you're seeing low voltage situations and those 30 amp receptacles getting burnt out.
Interesting. So now a park operator, they're having that situation. They're like, okay, now I have to upgrade. Are they able to do this in stages? Like they can do a certain, budget themselves out over a few years to do those upgrades? Or once you dive into this, is it like an all or nothing thing?
So yes. No, utility supply group's business really is what we kind of built ourselves on what I'll call an organic upgrade. So an RV park owner will take what he earned last year and put it into upgrades in his park. And whether you're doing 10 or 15 sites on a 400 amp panel and doing like Woody did in his park here, where he's doing sections at a time. That's an organic upgrade. That's an easy thing to do. I mean, you do it during your off time, or you close off certain sections and just go through and do it right. Put the right
Okay.
power in the ground. I like to say, when I was talking earlier about the $750 for the the most expensive thing you're going to do is dig that hole in the ground. Once you've got the hole dug, once you put the right stuff in there.
Put the right stuff in right away.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you talked about the code, and I think I've heard you in the past where you talk about you have the code for the electricity, but you also, it applies into the RVs too, right? Like the RV code ties into the code you've got for the boxes and everything else. So it's all interactive, right?
So the National Fire Protection Agency puts out a code standard called the National Electric Code, and it covers not only RVs, but RV parks, mobile homes, mobile home parks, park model RVs, marinas, all the kind of things we see in the outdoor industry.
Okay. So if somebody has a question about this, they can call you.
Absolutely.
So Wade, I appreciate your
Yep.
time.
Thanks, Mark.
I hope you found this useful. Obviously, I know nothing about electricity, and maybe you know a lot more. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, and goodbye.